out there! This is Wake Angel 2001, and it's the first time that I've ever actually been home on a Saturday. Man, like, it's been months. I mean, I was off last Saturday, but that was for Comic-Con, so I was in Manhattan, but now I'm like, I just had like a regular day off on Saturday, and it's so fantastic! Because I can watch Sonic Boom when it's live on TV. And that means that I can actually go back and recall the title. You and I become one. Alright, so for any of you Cronenberg fans out there, this is basically a parody of The Fly. Although it's not really the Jeff Goldblum Fly where he barfs onto a donut. It's more like the original Fly from the... I think that movie was made in the 1950s. The one that got parodied in The Simpsons. Alright, so... the episode begins with Eggman going on vacation. He's gonna go to a villain's retreat, but he doesn't want Sonic to be off the hook for a week, so he programs his B-bots to just automatically seek out and attack Sonic and his friends whenever he finds them. They find him. So the B-bots are just generally causing a bit of a nuisance. And Tails can't get his new matter transporter. He can't get any work done on his new matter transporter with all these attacks. So they all work together, they fight off the B-bots, and they come up with a plan to trap all the B-bots in a cave behind the force field. It's very similar to the cave set where Sonic found that mech suit from Mech Suits Me. Excuse me. They make a mention of how there could be an occasional bee straggler out there, but it shouldn't be too big a deal. Oh, on another note, why didn't we get a cameo from Bee? You know, BEA? The pet bee. The pet bee bot that Amy has. I mean, we haven't seen a cameo from Bee since Robots in the Sky, and that's just when it was flying around, having been suborned by Hypnobot. Anyway, missed opportunities aside, Tails decides to... He finally gets work done on his matter transporters. And the matter transporters look very much like the matter transporters from that episode of The Simpsons. You know, the Treehouse of Horror episode that was actually parodying The Fly. And he says that he's going to give it a test run. And then he proceeds to step into the machine himself. Tails, do you not know what a test run is? Like, I'm going to give it a test run by stepping inside of it and transporting myself and tearing my molecules apart in an untested machine. Like, oh my god, Tails, that is the stupidest thing. But hey, Tails is just 8 years old. He's prone to stupid and impulsive actions like this, no matter what his IQ is. So he steps into the machine, and just as he steps inside, a B-bot flies in with him, and he ends up getting transported. And what comes out is a cyborg B-bot Tails. Like, hi everybody! Oh, I was hoping that nobody would notice. So he basically has like a robot eye, kind of like Cyborg from Teen Titans, B-wings, and his tails have turned into stingers. He kind of looks like the cyborg Tails that the Zeddy turned him into in Sonic Lost World. And I'm pretty sure they're trying to bait for another action figure variant with this. Like B-bot cyborg Tails. Although, you know what? This episode has actually inspired a couple of custom action figures action figure ideas. Yeah, one of them would definitely be B-bot Tails. That would be funny. But I digress. So at first, Tails takes to his new B-bot form pretty well. You know, he's just kind of hanging around, trying to do his thing, and nobody really gives him too hard of a time for being a bee cyborg all of a sudden. So they figure if he went through the transporter and that merged him with a B-bot, then maybe they can reverse the process. But they decide to do a test run first instead of just sticking Tails into the machine. They take some milk, cherries, and flour, and they put it into the machine, and they transport it inside, and it comes out as a pie. And then they reverse the process to see if they can separate it back into the ingredients again, but what they get is a mass of pink goo. Like, yeah, I'm pretty sure Tails doesn't want to end up as a Let's just say that this wouldn't be too far from the Cronenberg movie if they went with that technique. So they had to work on how to get the machine to re-separate Tails and the Bebot when there's an emergency. It turns out that they were filming for a movie, and Tommy Thunder and some of the people making the movie got caught in an avalanche on set. Apparently they were doing a Lord of the Rings thing, except they call it an action movie instead of a fantasy movie. So, Lord of the Thing, Return of the Bling. You know what? No, that sounds like a stupid an action movie based off of Lord of the Rings. Okay, so they so they go off to do the rescue, and Sonic slips on the frozen lake, and a crack opens up which slows everyone down. But Tails, who can fly much faster with his bee wings than he ever could with his tails, is able to quickly get to the scene of the avalanche, and he uses the stingers to melt the snow so he can rescue everybody. So Tails actually kind of likes being a Bebot cyborg, but he keeps on hearing voices. Stick says, "Oh yeah, you get used to that." No you don't. Shut up. There's your crazy Sticksism for today, and it didn't make her look racist at all. So Tails, so it turns out that because the Bebots are all networked, Tails can hear the voice of the hive mind in his head. He's able to resist it for now, but it starts to claw away at him. At that night, he has a nightmare where Sonic and his friends are hunting down a bunch of bees, and they say, "There's one over there," and says like, "No, I'm one of you." like I'm getting serious Waspinator vibes. Like, everyone wants to hurt Waspinator. Oh, I remember that from the Windblade special. When Windblade and Chromio were trying to find Waspinator, he ran, and they tackled him to the ground and asked, "Why did you run?" "Because you want to hurt me." "Why would you think he would want to hurt you?" "Everybody wants to hurt me." And Windblade was like, "Gee, I'm really sorry about that." And Waspinator was like, "For the first time in Waspinator's life, someone has shown Waspinator a glimmer of kindness." But I'm not talking about Transformers. I'm talking about Sonic. Although I swear they must have drawn some inspiration from Waspinator for Tails' bee voice. It's just too much of a coincidence. The next day, Tails, after having the nightmare, Tails seems a lot more aloof on his morality. Mama Walrus's baby is up in a tree, and they say that Tails can easily fly up and rescue him. But Tails is like, "Nah, survival of the fittest and all. It's amazing that the kid actually got to live this long." Like that is not very heroic. That is the robot insect half of his mind. The part that is all in for survival of the fittest and natural selection and stuff like that. Although that is kind of true. Like, if it wasn't for all of our modern conveniences, the population of the world would probably be somewhere in the hundreds of thousands. Like, we really take for granted just how long we live, thanks to the fact that we removed ourselves from the topic of natural selection. Tails, realizing that he can no longer communicate very well with his friends, goes to the cave where the Bebots were locked away and frees them, declaring himself to be king of the Bebots. Oh, by the way, there was a scene earlier on where Sonic and company tried to get Eggman to turn the things off, but of course he wasn't there, and Cubot and Norbot didn't have the security clearance to disable the Bebots. In fact, the only thing that they could adjust in the lair was a thermostat, but when Cubot rose the temperature a little bit, a whole bunch of alarms started going off. So just because you can push the button doesn't necessarily mean that you're allowed, apparently. Oh, there was also a thing where the bees attacked Knuckles during leg day, and he says that this always happens. So if his leg days are always getting interrupted, maybe that's why his legs are so skinny and his arms are so huge. Okay, but let's continue on with the plot. Tails begins to attack with the Bebots, and although they're more coordinated, of course, they're still just Bebots, so the guys are able to fight them off pretty effectively. But it turns out that every time they take out a Bebot, Tails feels pain, feedback from the hive mind. So they don't want to hurt Tails, so they pull back. At this point, Sonic just runs to where the villain retreat is and interrupts Eggman's game of shuffleboard. Now, at first, Eggman's like, you know what? Why should I bother helping you? Like, I want you guys to be in distress. I'm the villain, remember? And he's like, well, yeah, except that this means that you're allowing your B-bots to be controlled by someone else. And some of the other villains start chortling behind Eggman's back. So, if for no other reason than to save face, Eggman agrees to help Sonic. They go to Tails' lab, and he makes the adjustments to the transport pod, and to test it by putting an inanimate object in, like every intelligent scientist should do. Like, you see that, Tails? Dr. Eggman knows how to properly test equipment. He's Dr. Eggman. He puts a pie in the machine, and the ingredients come out the other side. So, yes, it worked. They got it back to separate mode. So there's one more action beat with Tails where Eggman says that by smashing the B-bots, they can weaken Tails so that they can get him into the machine. Although he'll charge them for the B-bots smashed. So they take out enough B-bots that Tails collapses unconscious, and they put him in the machine, and he's separated back into himself and the B-bot. They smash the B-bot, and Tails' memories of everything that happened are kind of fuzzy, but you know, it's a happy ending. And oh yes, in order to attract Tails in the hive mind, we go to custom action figure idea number 2 of the episode, Sonic in a ridiculous sunflower costume. I got a Sonic figure right here. I can do it. I have an extra Sonic figure. I could totally do that if I wanted to. Kinda want to. I feel like that's something that they wouldn't actually make a toy of. I'm convinced that Tomy might make the Tails cyborg, but to make Sonic as a sunflower, nah, I don't think we get an official toy of that. So Sonic dresses in a sunflower costume to attract them. Tails is like, Tails first calls him a snapdragon. He says, "I'm a sunflower." And after, "Sonic, why are you dressed as a daffodil?" "Sunflower!" So he says that they learned an important lesson. Like, what lesson was that? Don't turn into a bee? Yeah, that's a great lesson. like, the lesson is to properly test your lab equipment. Don't just go jumping into your experimental transporter without first testing it on something else. Duh! And that is, you and I become one. Yeah, like I said, this is basically a Fly parody. It's a pretty solid storyline. I mean, everybody does this. Every vaguely science fiction show that has a matter transporter will eventually do a merged identity thing. They did in Star Trek: The Next Generation when Barclay got attacked by something in the matter stream and his body started glowing. They did it in Star Trek Voyager, where Tuvok and Neelix got fused into a single being that called itself Tealix. And now they've done it here. So, and they actually, and you know, matter transportation isn't a stranger to the Sonic games. It is. I mean, they did it in Sonic Mania with those radio transmitter transporters, and Chaos Control is basically matter transportation that you do with yourself. So yeah, I mean, it's not like Sonic's a stranger to this genre, but still, like, it's a pretty stock plot, very common, but there is absolutely nothing wrong with the implementation. It's a solid parody. So what it loses in originality, it gains for actually being a really good parody. So things balance out, and it comes out as a good episode. Alright, so hopefully we'll see you again next week for the next Sonic Boom episode. I feel like, what episode was this? We're already up to episode 48, so assuming a 52 episode long season, we should only have 4 episodes to go. We're getting pretty close to the end of season 2. Again, here's really to hoping that they make a season 3. Alright, catch you next time.